Hey everybody, Professor Schnarr here. A quick update for our masterpieces of world literature. We're nearly halfway through, which is hard to believe. So we're working on the midterm essay assignment, which is due Tuesday, June 8th. It's Monday right now when I'm recording this, so the midterm will be due Tuesday. So this is a little bit different, as I've explained in the unit itself, which I'm looking at right now. Only in as much as instead of posting a response essay directly to a discussion board, we're doing it just as an attached file, probably Word document for most people, that you're attaching through Blackboard itself. So it still all occurs in Blackboard, it's just a slightly different format. The only reason is because this writing assignment is a little bit longer and involves a little more kind of source integration. It's probably easier to do as an essay that you develop in a word processor as opposed to trying to type it into a discussion board post. In fact, many people might be doing this already, or you might find that it's actually a lot easier to work in Word and then cut and paste into a discussion board post for those units where we're doing discussion board material. In fact, the reason we use the discussion board is just for the discussion aspect of it. So if everything were turned in as a document just to me, that means that only I would be getting them. And a lot of what's really interesting about the course and what people I think are hopefully finding is that you learn a lot, not just by reading the primary text material, but in fact by reading what other people are writing about that material, so reading other students' work, and that's what the discussion board allows us to do. So that's the reason for the slight difference here. In terms of the approach or the kind of style that you're writing in, it's really the same as those longer response essays. You're working with the basic idea, obviously thinking about kind of organizational things, quoting directly from the primary texts. And you may have noticed, or not noticed as the case might be, that we're not really concerned with proper MLA citation and that sort of thing. So I've tried to really tone down the kind of writing aspect of what we're doing, in as much as it's not a writing course, so I'm not too concerned with basic mechanics and that kind of thing. If poor mechanics get in the way of communicating meaning effectively, then that matters, obviously. But I'm not concerned with whether people are doing MLA citation correctly or not, so not a big deal. Provide a page number and, that'll be good enough. The midterm essay then, which many people have hopefully started already, is really just working with Plato's very famous allegory of the cave. In fact, we're taking it in kind of its simplest form, just as an analogy for kind of self-discovery or coming to new knowledge, if you want to think of it that way. The allegory itself is actually part of a much larger discussion of really the sort of nature of reality itself and Plato's own beliefs in what our experience of reality was. So the allegory can really get you into kind of a tailspin in terms of pursuing it too far for this particular assignment. So our focus really isn't the allegory itself, but more like how we can use the allegory as this larger metaphor, kind of for either, and these are the options that you're choosing from, either as a metaphor for what you've learned in the course so far, or what knowledge you've come to, or the other option is to discuss a particular character that we've run into and how he or she has come to new knowledge. In fact, I've been thinking a lot lately about this kind of archetypal idea where we have, millions of different movies and books and plays and all through the history of all of that kind of literature, but how you can often boil all of that variety down into very few basic patterns. And obviously they're so basic that it's really the detail that makes them interesting, obviously. But of course, coming to new knowledge is one of those fundamental kind of narrative patterns that we run into over and over again. The nuance then is what that knowledge is and what effect it ultimately has on the character, and whether the character even realizes it or can articulate what that kind of epiphany or coming to new knowledge, what that moment really means. So it's a basic pattern, but of course it plays out in so many interesting and different ways. We keep right on moving, though, through midterm, if you can believe that. Again, sort of Wednesday would be midterm of our course. And Friday we move into, or we have a due date for Unit 6, which is a discussion of the quote-unquote middle period, one of those variously named periods of literature depending on what sources you look at. Anyway, that's where we're headed, but right now our focus is that midterm essay. I want to say again what a pleasure it's been to read so many of these, the discussion board response essays and the replies to those essays. I think people are providing, even in our limited time, some really thoughtful analysis of individual works and characters, but also bringing together certain similarities. So in many ways, the masterpieces of world literature, you realize, is like a comparative literature course where you're really looking for those kind of trends or patterns. Not that everything is the same, but that we do have these kind of fundamental narrative structures or character sort of patterns that characters move through that remain the same throughout history, across geographies. It's really kind of interesting to see those play out. And then, I'm going on at length here, I think the interesting extension really beyond our course maybe, but I sort of hinted at it with things like modern movies that follow these same sort of archetypal patterns, or even that really great Star Trek clip where Captain Picard defaults to the Epic of Gilgamesh as this sort of mode of speaking through analogy that this sort of alien race he's run into has. But it's really fascinating to see how new kind of media productions, whether it's just new novels that come out or new movies or whatever it happens to be, they borrow some of these fundamental, traditional, kind of archetypal narrative patterns. It's really interesting to be able to identify those when you see them, not as this new idea, but, oh my God, that's the same as this 300-year-old thing that I just read for class. Anyway, so I look forward to reading the midterm essays, and hopefully, even though we're just zooming through the class here, you do have the opportunity to let some of what we're reading actually have an effect on you, and it's not just, oh, I got to slog through this and write another thing and then slog through the next thing. So hopefully there is time to stop and smell the roses, even as we move pretty quickly through what we're doing. So any questions, please be in touch with me.